Watching Stranger Things is a thrilling yet bizarre experience with superpowers, demogorgons, and even upside-down worlds. But what does some of these iconic scenes in Stranger Things look like before the special CGI effects were added? Well, in this video, we're going to give you an all-access pass behind the scenes of Stranger Things and take a look at some of their most well-kept secrets. Make sure you stay to the end because you will be shocked by what happens.
Do you want to win any of these items on your screen? If so, be sure to watch the whole video, leave a like, and comment the hidden message. And with that being said, let's get right into the video.
First up is that the scenes with the Demodogs were actually done using jelly props. Remember the Demo puppies that totally captured Dustin's trusting heart before they turned out to be Demogorgon dogs? Well, there is no way those were real, right? So, does it mean the cast members simply stared into an empty space, whatever they were looking at, talking to, or carrying the terrifyingly cute creature? Of course not. They had to put placeholders so the actors would have their eye line in the right direction. Apparently, the show creators used two different sets of placeholder props for this. The first set were jelly action figures, which were basically models of the actual Demodogs we saw on the screen, only made of inedible jelly. Now, when the Demo puppies grew up to become full-size dogs, the small jelly toys proved to be too small to create a believable sightline. So, they had to create plastic heads to be stuck onto the sticks. That is right. A staff member had to manually operate the plastic heads to keep the illusion. Next is the fact that there is a guy whose job is to blow dandelion seeds all around the Upside Down. One thing that makes the Upside Down absolutely magical is the fact that there is always spores flying around. There is a little secret though. These things were not added through CGI. You see, they had to create the perfect scenario where the seeds would be floating everywhere, but also reacting appropriately to the movements of whoever is in the scene. It is much more complicated to do this digitally. So, when you come to visit the set of Stranger Things, do not be surprised to see a man standing there blowing seeds the same way kids blow bubbles. I mean, how funny is that? Next, the Mind Flayer, which gave us nightmares for months, was actually a very silly man. The big bad wolf of Stranger Things Season 2 made the Demogorgon look like a joke. Well, that might be an exaggeration. But all I am saying is that there are very few things in life scarier than a shadow monster that has psychic powers which can control not just people, but other monsters too. If you want to get over your fear of the Mind Flayer though, I urge you to find footage of the original scene before the video effects were added in. I swear, you can just picture the scene in your head whenever terrifying thoughts of the Mind Flayer start to take over. Even the production staff cannot help but lose their marbles over this guy wearing a red suit and a metal helmet as a placeholder for the Mind Flayer. It is pretty hard to hold on to the horrifying fantasy once you've seen this silly guy knocking over stuff and slithering on the floor, just like the Mind Flayer. Next up is the drip. If you think there is no challenge in creating Eleven's recurring nosebleeds, then you are hugely mistaken. It is not like you can store small vials of fake blood up Millie Bobby Brown's nose. Even a small pack of plastic filled with the red liquid cannot fit up there. Not to mention, it could be a health hazard for the young actress. So most of the time, the production staff had to drop a precise amount of fake blood up Millie's nose, and she really had to keep her head tilted back until it was time for a nosebleed. This is such a rigorous practice, but it is actually hilarious to imagine Millie on the set with fake blood up her nose, trying to dribble it so it won't fall before they shoot the next scene. The precision required for this entire process is just too much that when things are tight, they actually have no choice but to do it all via CGI. Did you notice that some of those nose drips were actually computer generated? Next, the main monster in Season 1 is an actual guy. Remember the predatory Demogorgon in Season 1? That creature was too horrible to be nothing but a figment of the imagination made true by some epic visual effects, right? Well, apparently the show creators wanted very little computer animation on the first season, so they had an actual live person play the role before they embellished him with CGI. So yes, an actual person had to wear a Demogorgon costume covered with bits of green cloth to make the post-production editing easier. If you want to give props to the person behind the awesome villain, you can look up performer Mark Steger. He is the guy who put on the creature suit and waved his hands a lot. You can thank him for giving us such a legendary pilot season. Next up is the props that are used are actually old. One of the things that makes Stranger Things a really interesting show is the ability to conjure up nostalgia, especially for 80s babies. It is impressive how these scenes inside the grocery store actually features snacks, candies, and memorabilia that have long been gone from the market shelves. A lot of people thought these props, along with the old boomboxes and bikes, were digitally retouched, but that is actually not the case. Veteran prop master Linda Rice has to scour eBay, flea markets, and prop rentals to get the most amazing vintage stuff for the show. It cost production $220,000 to get everything they needed. Stuff like Jonathan Byers' Pentax SLR, the Panasonic boombox in Will's room, the Memorex cassette, the yellow wall phone, and chocolate pudding in cans are just some of the most interesting vintage props that we get to see in the show. Next is the Void is basically just a giant hockey rink. 3 seasons in and we still do not know very much about the Upside Down. Well, at least we know now that most of it, like the Void, is just a big rink. I mean, who would have thought that it would actually be so complicated to mimic a vast expanse of nothingness with nothing but soul-deep water in it? If you have ever wondered if the cast really had to get wet for those scenes, the answer is yes. Show creators built a mini hockey rink and filled it with just enough water to reflect in full whoever steps on it. Even the darkness is not CGI. The entire hockey rink had to be surrounded by black theater drapes, but of course, they had to adjust the lighting and contrast in post-production so that the final result will not look like Millie's just standing in an empty theater stage. Next, Joe Keery was actually kicked out of the kids' group chat. Here's a behind-the-scenes secret that's both fascinating and heartbreaking. Apparently, all the kids in Stranger Things have a group chat where they update each other, tell jokes, and exchange juicy details about their personal lives. Apparently, Joe Keery used to be part of the Cool Kids group chat back when they were shooting Season 1, but he was promptly kicked out of it once others found out that he was way older than the rest of the kids. To compare, Joe is now 28 years old, while Millie is just 16. Sadly, the older members of the cast don't have their own clique. Next is that the vintage walkie-talkies actually worked. Well, sometimes. It is actually not that hard to come by walkie-talkies that still work to this day. However, for this show, they needed walkie-talkies from the 80s, or at least some that looked like the ones used in the 80s. As mentioned earlier, the show's prop master was awesome enough to find walkie-talkies that were perfect for the show. However, the challenge was trying to get them to work. Most of the walkie-talkie conversations in the show were made using sound effects and manipulation, but here is a little behind-the-scenes knowledge. Sometimes, the walkie-talkies would actually work. but of course, they were too unpredictable to rely on for all of the scenes. But it was cool to think that those vintage phones would sometimes spook the young members of the cast by emitting low, monotone sounds and radio scratches. Next is that Joe Keery has a contractual obligation to keep his locks pristine. Here's another secret. Did you know that Joe literally cannot mess with his hair? When he signed a contract to do Stranger Things, the show's producers found his hairdo perfect for the 80s themed show. So they inserted a provision in his contract that he cannot, in any way, change up his hairstyle, or he could risk losing the role or get significant pay cuts. If you think this is a bit too much, then just try to imagine Stranger Things without Joe's shiny, curly, angelic mane. I mean, it's impossible, right? Next moment is that Eleven's hair in flashback scenes were CGI. Some people think it is unfair that Joe Keery cannot style his own hair when they allowed Millie Bobby Brown to just CGI her way into bald flashbacks in season 2. So we all know the dramatic story of Millie Bobby Brown having to get her head shaved for season 1. It was a big moment for the young actress who said she had just gotten accustomed to hiding behind her full hair whenever she's feeling self-conscious. Still, Millie said having a semi-bald head did not make her feel powerful. However, she begged and begged the staff not to make her go through that ordeal again, just for some flashback scenes in season 2. First, they tried the good old bald, wrap, and short wig combo, but Millie's short curly hair proved too difficult to keep under a bald cap, so they had to go with CGI. Next, did you know that Noah Schnapp is an expert at making faces? In an interview, Noah was asked to recall some of the hardest acting pieces that he has had to do in Stranger Things. In season 2, he had to go up against the Mind Flayer all alone. This meant a lot of working alone against some green screens. Remember how he was strangled by the enemy monster at one point? Yeah, Noah was just making faces the whole time. Pretty convincing, right? He had to do this all over again when he was possessed and every time Will Byers had a seizure in the show. Because of all these scenes, Noah had become sort of a master at making faces. Lastly, here is how that flipping van scene looked before they put in the CGI. Here is everything you need to know about this iconic scene. Every part of it was authentic, except the part where the van flipped over a bunch of innocent, awestruck kids. So the production staff had to use actual explosives to make the huge van flip over in the air. So when it was time to shoot the scene with the kids, they simply had to imagine that a van was flipping right above them. Now this takes tremendous talent and proves that once again, the cast of Stranger Things are some of the best performers we have ever seen. So there you have it. Some of the most top secret and impressive behind the scenes moments of Stranger Things. Season 4 plans on coming out at the end of 2020 or the start of 2021. And it is a show that has a lot of fans impatiently waiting. What do you think about Stranger Things? And will you be watching season 4? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching the video.
A simple reminder on how to enter our brand new giveaway. We will be giving away either an iPhone X Max, the new iPad mini, or a MacBook Pro. It's really your choice. So be sure to leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter the giveaway. It's really that simple. Go for it.